Good morning. Thank you for being here. This is the great city of Glendale, and we're here to celebrate all sorts of issues transportation related, I believe, here. So with that, welcome, and pleased to see you all here this morning. It's a little early for some of us in Glendale, but nonetheless, what do we have here anyway? A couple hundred people, I guess, huh? Thank you. You're there, right? I mean, it's so bright up here we can hardly see it. Thank you for being here. Buddy was kind enough to introduce the board and welcome some of the Transportation Solutions folks. I'd like to continue with that welcome real quick and let you know that we have a handful of mayors in the audience today. Thank you all for being here. We have city council members from Denver and Glendale and other cities sprinkled throughout. We have members of the RTD board and staff. Thank you all for being here. We have folks here from the, what's that? From really all over the metro area. And one of the exciting things about Transportation Solutions is really how they've expanded their reach beyond just Cherry Creek and Glendale. But now if you look at the map, and I believe you have some information at your table there, really stretching the boundaries of Transportation Solutions and finding new ways to work with Denver and Glendale, but also Aurora, and how that then connects to other cities in the metro area. So what we're going to talk about this morning is a lot about that connection stuff, links and likes and dislikes with transportation. Probably throw a little RTD at you and opinions there. Big vote coming up next Tuesday. I'm sure you've heard about that, and see where the conversation leads us. So it should be interesting. But let's get right to it, shall we? We're on a time schedule here. You have a program at your seat there. And what you'll notice is that the first half, we're going to talk to mayors. We've got Steve Hogan here from Aurora, Michael Hancock joining us from Denver. Have a little conversation among the mayors. And then there'll be a halftime where you can take a quick break, enjoy the networking. This is a great networking event. Get to know some of the people here in the room. And then the second half is going to be all about the Chambers of Commerce, where we have Kevin Hogan from Aurora joining us, as well as Kelly Bruff from the Denver Chamber. So think of it in two halves with a little halftime there in between. How's that? Fair enough? Good. Let's get into it then. Steve Hogan was elected mayor of Aurora just a few months ago in November. He has been very involved with economic development in Aurora and Adams County. We've known him regionally for years, and Steve, you've inherited a couple big projects, the Fitzsimmons thing and that Gaylord thing, of course. And let's invite you up here. So the great mayor of Aurora, folks, this is Steve Hogan.
Well, good morning. That music helped fit this morning. Trying to get here from the hinterlands of Aurora. I live about 2 blocks short of as far north as Aurora, in Aurora as you can go. And for those of you who aren't familiar with the area, that 2 blocks short of as far north in Aurora as you can go is about 9 minutes from my front door to the drop-off at DIA. So it takes a while to get here, but that's what Transportation Solutions are all about. Finding ways to move people in metropolitan areas and make it easier for all of us. And we do need help. We need help. There are so many exciting ideas and concepts linked to economic development. Linked to just simply getting people from where they live to where they work, where they live to where they shop, and a whole variety of options and alternatives that we all need to adopt. But in this metropolitan area, in this time, in this economic climate, in this time of restrictions, we need help, and we need help from our surrounding neighbors, from our neighbor jurisdictions, to get it done. Whether it's in the city of Aurora, where we have just a small little street improvement that we'd like to make. 6th Avenue. Just trying to connect 6th Avenue between 225 and E470. $15 million project. Not big in the scope of things, but it's important to Buckley Air Force Base. It's important to City of Aurora. It's important to Front Range Airport and to DIA. And trying to find $15 million today, whether it's in the city budget or whether it's in state funds or whether it's in federal funds, is next to impossible. Light rail, 225, light rail. North Metro Denver, light rail. Northwest Metro Denver, whether it's light rail or bus rapid transit or something else, trying to get it done. It's going to require help. It's going to require all of us. It's going to require a vote. It's going to require us to make a decision whether we want to raise our taxes to do it. And yet, when we started this program, everybody was in favor of it. Nobody was opposed to it. We all wanted it. But this is an example of when you identify clearly what you're going to vote on, you better provide it, because if you don't, the support starts falling away. And then you better be able to provide it. Bicycle options, bus options. We've got plenty of opportunities. We also have plenty of challenges. And help is what we need. We need to help each other. And I, for one, am happy to look at the map and see an expansion of transportation solutions moving into West Aurora. We don't have a formal organization in our city, but we have a lot of issues, as the mayor mentioned. The Anschutz Fitzsimmons campus. There are already 17,000 people working there. They have a tough time getting there, whether it's a car or a bus or a bicycle, and they can't get there by light rail because it doesn't exist yet. It's a challenge for us, and it has to be met. So help, opportunities, options, choices, they are all good. They are what we need in this metropolitan area, and we need them all. You know, we're a city of 335,000 people. We're a city that, if we grow to our full potential, will be somewhere between 750 and 800,000 people. We have 2 north-south interstates, if you will, 1 east-west interstate. We're surrounded by 3 airports. We've got an Air Force base that is part of our city, part of our economy. We have all kinds of opportunities, but we have all kinds of challenges. And we have to find ways to bring it all together, and we have to do it in, I believe, a metropolitan context. So I'm happy to be here. I'm happy to talk a little bit about Aurora, a little bit about the challenges that our metropolitan area faces, and I'm looking forward to what Mayor Hancock is going to have to say. I'm looking forward to having a little bit of a conversation. So thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Thanks. Grab a seat. Yeah, grab a seat. So, you're all familiar with Aurora. It's the western half, you might say, practically, of the Denver metropolitan area. And you mentioned a few interesting statistics there. So you think your population is going to double in the next, what are you thinking, 50 years, 10 years,
50,
tomorrow?
60 years.
Yeah?
Right.
What does the build-out look like? You know, there was some jokes from your predecessor about annexing land east of Aurora and then hitting Kansas, and you commonly say, well, why stop there? And that was kind of a funny thing. But
well, actually, we're looking at heading up, we're taking advantage of law in Colorado flagpoles and heading up the mountains. So we really don't need to annex any more land. That's filling in at current densities what we already have. Now, if we become more of an urban center and less of a suburban community, those densities will increase. If those densities increase,
you're not talking about 750,000, 800,000. You may be talking about 900,000. And we have our own water. We don't rely on Denver water. So we have no restrictions there other than what nature provides. So we have the opportunities.
Let's talk about Fitzsimmons for a minute, because you mentioned there's some 17,000 people that work there now. It's my understanding that can grow, double that size, maybe 40,000 or so?
Maybe 40,000. They're actually, Children's Hospital and University Hospital are expanding at the moment. The VA hospital is under construction. In that square mile of ground, there is currently $10 billion worth of construction underway. Those are not contracts waiting to be let. Those are contracts that have already been let, and there's construction underway.
So that's huge. As an employment center then, that draws largely from the Denver area as well as Aurora, and having that be a real focal point, how do you look in terms of, you mentioned a little bit about all the different ways to get there. Tell the group what does that light rail stop look like someday? And is that the one that's coming up 225? And how do you get all those people there?
Someday, hopefully sooner rather than later, light rail will continue on up 225, and we'll connect to the campus and swing under 225 at about 13th. It'll literally run through the middle of the campus. Nice. Over to Montview and Peoria. Then we'll run up Peoria to Smith Road, where it will connect to the East Line that's currently been approved already, that's heading out to the airport. So it will create a circle among downtown, Anschutz, Tech Center, back to downtown.
So given the success of the 9 Mile station, that's the one at Parker at 225, we all have heard stories about how it tends to fill up. Parking is not even available past, 7:30 or whatever the time is, and that's been a big success. Do we expect similar successes going north up there? You know, we got the Iliff station coming, in maybe 2014, in a couple of years, and then on up and then ultimately connect.
Right, there are several stations. But our challenge, our opportunity, the typical RTD build-out does not include structured parking.
Okay.
It's generally surface parking. And we're lucky with 9 Mile that there was structure. But as you said, it fills up far too early in the morning. What we'd like to do is provide an opportunity for more parking at each of those stations.
Okay.
People are, even with transit-oriented development, which is great, building up, not building out, and it's focused on light rail and transit opportunities. Still, if everybody who lived in transit-oriented development used light rail, there'd still be space on those trains. And those who don't live there have to get there. To get there, they have to drive their car.
Park.
Do they park there, or do they park in front of somebody's house? Somebody's driveway, somebody's backyard. You want to be able to provide those opportunities and at the same time address the needs. So,
do you see a public partner-private-ship? You know, when I was a kid, I lived in Green Bay, Wisconsin, and there's the Lambeau Field literally sits right in the neighborhood. So it creates a great economic impact to the neighborhood when those folks rent out their driveways and their front yards, and they let people park there for really a lot of money and tailgate and all that. I'm not sure that's the kind of public-private partnership
Probably
we want to encourage at this point, but I do want to ask you about the bid that came in recently, because the thing is, there's a Metro Mayor's Caucus, and that's 40 mayors sitting around a room every month or two talking about regional issues, and there's great value in building those relationships and whatnot. But the one thing we agreed to a year ago when we talked about RTD going to the ballot then was the value of the build out of the whole system. The value in the fast tracks and RTD system is really the entire system. So if I'm you and you've got this thing coming right up the middle of Aurora, essentially fast tracks, I'd want to build that thing as soon as possible. Have you seen this? Have you talked to these folks? Is there hope
We're
there?
trying to talk to them.
Yeah.
For those who don't know, the Kiewit Corporation submitted an unsolicited, confidential proposal to RTD to extend part of light rail up 225. The good news is they submitted the proposal. The bad news is it is confidential and it is submitted to RTD, not the City of Aurora. So we get our information slowly but surely, kind of the same way everybody else does. But what we're also hearing is there may be others who are interested. I think those kinds of partnerships make sense. Certainly my own transportation background with E470 and Northwest Parkway was with public-private partnerships. Get it done. Identify how to do it, identify how to finance it, get it done. And my hope is that that's what we're going to see, maybe not just with 225, but with some of the other remaining corridors that haven't been addressed.
Good deal. Before you leave, I know you have to go here in a minute. We have Mayor Hancock in the room. Come on up here, Michael, if you would, please. How about a welcome to the Mayor of Denver? Thank you, Michael, for being here.
What's up, buddy? How you doing?
Bring it.
What's up, my man?
All right, good seeing you.
So we have Harte, Hancock, and Hogan, huh?
We do indeed, for the pleasure of the company, of the audience here. We should talk about the relationship between Aurora and Denver, or the lack of one for a while, but these are different times. Your predecessors have ushered in a new era of cooperation and whatnot. We talked a little bit about the Fitzsimmons campus. We've got the Fast Tracks thing blowing right through the middle of that in a few years. How's that work between the two? How do we connect that stuff between? We've got employees, you want to get it, I'll get out of the way if we need to. I don't know, how do those connections work between you two?
You know what? Mayor Hogan and I, first of all, good morning, everyone. We got to work on that traffic in Glendale.
Do we? We have the right people in the room to address that. Did you walk or?
Yeah, I ran, actually. Actually, it's not. Mayor Hogan and I had known each other before we became mayors. We're both members of city councils, our respective city councils, and we had spent some time talking about the possibility and the dream of actually working with each other at this level. It's a very easy relationship, one in which we have and will continue to pick up the phone and talk to each other, even on the difficult issues, I think, and work through them together. But we certainly don't acknowledge the boundaries. This is our region, and we're going to work together for the best.
People don't know when they cross those boundaries, let's face it.
Right.
A lot of times they're blind to that.
Absolutely.
Yep. It's true. There's a new opportunity to address things together, and obviously it's not just Aurora and Denver. Right. It's the metropolitan area.
Absolutely.
We've got issues that touch Highlands Ranch, Thornton, Longmont, Boulder, Glendale, that address all of us. So we've got to find a way to do it.
Well, the key is we're all connected. Right. And this is really the first step, just being able to sit here. I mentioned Green Bay a minute ago. I went to high school in Cincinnati, and the Chamber of Commerce in Denver, the big one, does a leadership exchange program every year, and we go to different cities. Well, Cincinnati picked Denver to come visit this past year, and they were amazed that mayors could sit together on a stage or in the same room and have discussions. Like, how else would you do it? How could you not do that? And that was amazing to me, but there's a lot to that perspective, and luckily there's a 20 or something year history where we do things like this and share the stage and go to each other's respective communities and all. So really that's the first step. Where it goes from there, though, is just as important.
Yeah, I think if you reflect on the progress of this region, it has all been done through collaboration and regionalism and an attitude toward working together. Fast Tracks, of course, is the biggest example, but when we go to Washington, where I just was last week with about 55, 60 business stakeholders from the area, the White House talks about what's going on in Denver and how they use it as a model for the rest of the country to emulate if they want to have more resources and opportunities with the federal government.
We have to spend some time with each other or it doesn't work.
Right.
I think that's part of the problem that we have not only in Washington, D.C., but to some extent at the state capitol. Most of you don't know, I'm also a former state representative, so I can talk about that entity as a graduate or an escapee, whatever it may be. But in this day and age, people don't spend enough time talking to each other, talking with each other, and getting to know each other. Even just a little bit, it helps. When you don't have any idea why somebody is who they are, it's kind of tough to talk to them when times are difficult. It's easy when times are easy.
Sure.
But when you don't have any idea who your partner is, who your potential help is, and why they operate the way they do, then it makes it difficult to put together deals, very frankly. And so...
Well, the one thing we can agree on is it's a good foundation that gets laid. So, and it's important for you all to understand that as we go back to work here later today and on into the future, the first step is knowing who to talk to and having a decent conversation there, building that relationship. The other thing that gets interesting is when you look at our 3 cities and the Regional Tourism Act stuff comes into play. You know, Gaylord and the Stock Show teamed up for a while. Denver backed out. Aurora put forth their application regardless. Glendale's got a big Riverwalk project in the mix there, and it's important to be able to pick up the phone, as we've done, and talk about this stuff.
Absolutely.
Instead of comparing and contrasting projects, why not work together to see if we can find ways to build a bunch of these things over time and support one another in that effort. So given that, I think the next step from here when we talk about connections and bike paths and striping on streets and how to make those happen, knowing that our audience understands the relationship that at least the 3 of us have, and it really extends far beyond that. It sets the table for people like George, I think, in the audience here to go to work knowing that he's got some friends on the other side of that border, regardless of whether or not people know that that border exists and where it is precisely and that kind of stuff. Steve, I know you need to go here pretty soon. Anything you want to add?
I'm just happy to be here. I wish everybody well today. I know you'll have some good discussions, and I am sorry that I ran in and I'm running out, but it's one of those days. I have to go to another meeting that involves a group of numerous mayors and county commissioners on other regional projects. So I do have to do that. I'd made that commitment first, but I wanted to make sure I got here to talk about how important it is and how happy I am that it's happening and how we all can expand and work together. So I appreciate it.
Want to throw any opinion on the RTD thing? You know, that big vote's coming up next week. Tax or no tax this year?
I still think there's an opportunity to do it. I'd like to see a little more cohesiveness from the Northwest Corridor. I think that's critical to passing any vote, but it's also still only March, so we have some time.
Purposely vague, spoken like a true mayor. Nicely done. Steve,
True
thanks.
mayor. Enjoy your day.
It's down to Hancock and
I
Harte
think
here,
you
huh?
found a second career when you stepped down from the throne.
Well, we'll see about that. But hey, thanks for being here.
My pleasure to
Big
be
deal.
here.
The mayor's
Absolutely.
schedule in Denver is a little busier than some of these other cities, but we appreciate you crossing the borders here.
Absolutely.
So, Hogan talked for a few minutes about some of
I
the
don't know
important
that there's
issues in Aurora. Transportation, you know, let's face it, it goes from walking and running and biking all the way up to the airport. We're probably going to touch on that. Cars, trains, and automobiles, go
Right.
centrally, huh?
Right.
So, fill us in. What are some of the issues and happenings in Denver? And you know, we have a crowd here. It's pretty well spread out, but it tends to kind of focuses around the Transportation Solutions Zone,
Right.
which is Denver and especially the Cherry Creek and DU area.
Absolutely.
Into Glendale over to 225. There's a map in their packets there, and they do good work, Mike.
Well, first of all, thank you for the opportunity. It's a real pleasure to be here. And as I scan the audience, I see a few of the in Denver partners, certainly Councilwoman Robb sitting back there. I think Councilman Nevitt, Council President Nevitt is in the audience somewhere. At least I was told he'd be here. But I do see former City Councilwoman Sue Casey up front here, and George Roney as well. Let me just say that this is a real opportunity to come before you and talk about how we're working to try to put all these pieces together to build a more sustainable city infrastructure in Denver. And a lot's been done prior to me arriving, even on to City Council in 2003. One of the people who will help us lead that, of course, is George Delaney, our Manager of Public Works, and will be our Chief Operating Officer of Public Works in about a month as Jose Cornejo comes on board to help. And I do see Councilwoman Lehman. I just saw her head poke out. But listen, Denver has been in the throes of these discussions about sustainability, about better roads, about better quality of life, about blending our land use visions and philosophies with our needs around transportation for quite some time. You might recall the comprehensive plan that was adopted around the late part of the century and early part of the turn of the century. And then we moved into Blueprint Denver, which really, well, first of all, comprehensive plan talked about transportation and blended with our land use concepts and philosophies and how we advance Denver as a more sustainable community. And then we moved into Blueprint Denver, which really laid out the vision for land development and land use in Denver, making it more sustainable as well as making the right investments in the right locations with regards to our city as we grow and as we work toward greater sustainability. Today, we have plans like the Strategic Transportation Plan on board, which talks about how we can blend not only the land use, but transportation, but the whole ideas of sustainability, fitness, if you will, healthier communities, better use of our roadways to promote economic development, getting people out of their cars, really moving people outside of the thought of automobiles. And fast tracks is the hallmark of that plan. It doesn't work without fast tracks. But it calls for us that when we go about our development in Denver, that we look at wider sidewalks, that as we build out roads, we're thinking about share roads, and we're thinking about bike lanes, and those things that promote folks to move without jumping into automobiles. And as you see, in the last several years, Denver has, matter of fact, this past year, we increased our bike lanes by 77 miles in Denver. Our commitment is to continue to do that, to take a look at our new roads, but also the existing roads, and how we can get more people using bicycles, how we can encourage pedestrian or walkability of certain neighborhoods. Planning, of course, is a big part of that, where we put our grocery stores, where we bring in new amenities to communities. All this is a part of our efforts moving forward. And let me just say this. One of the values that my administration is trying to really inoculate within the city structure is, as we move forward with developments, as we talk about improving certain areas of town, or we're widening roads or improving roads or doing infrastructure, horizontal or otherwise, in areas, we ask the question of how does this lend itself to sustainability? And by asking that question simply allows us to begin the process of asking about how do we bring comprehensive plan to life? How do we address the Blueprint Denver values that underline that land use plan? How do we address strategic transportation plan? How do we make sure that we're doing or bringing forward those values of environmental sustainability, cultural sustainability, economic sustainability, while we plan out certain projects and plans? So we are committed to moving forward with the values that preceded us in this administration, dusting off some of those plans, making sure they're still alive and that they are up to date and consistent with where we are today, but also that we are thoughtful about our future. The planning that we do today is really going to impact what happens tomorrow. And if we're committed to moving people outside their automobiles, then we need to advance those values today and make sure we lay the groundwork and really demonstrate it through some of the things that you see us doing. So that's just kind of a short snippet of kind of an overriding snippet of what we're doing. We can address more of those issues, but I'll say again, fast tracks is extremely important to us, not only in Denver, but regionally. We want to move people. We want people out of automobiles. We want to encourage people to bike. Our Public Works and Parks and Rec Department are already drawing strategic maps to connect our bike lanes to our trails so that we can encourage mobility that way as well. And so we're doing some of these things that ultimately will bring all of these efforts and values together.
And make it easier.
And make it easier. Absolutely.
I think that's a big part of it. when you look at Union Station, for example, being in the center of this Fast Tracks map, it's also the core city, Denver. You know, it's important to recognize the strength of that core city and how, you know, the tides rise and fall with that, and really how we're all connected. But as Union Station builds out and those lines come in, we said earlier, the value to Fast Tracks is really the whole system build out.
Absolutely.
Now you got to start somewhere.
Right.
First line up to 5 points there from downtown, and then extending it down south on 2 legs, and then now I think the next line is out to Lakewood, right? And we've got the airport line coming. You've got the 225 line coming.
That's right.
But there's a whole north side to address too. And
Right.
as a mayor, we can appreciate the position that the Westminster and Longmont and Louisville and other mayors, Boulder, are in. And that's tricky stuff. But I think we're here to support their position. Wouldn't you agree?
Oh, absolutely. You know, this is Union Station today.
What, your fist?
Our future. This is
power
the
of
hub.
mayor?
The hub. This is Union Station
Yeah.
in the future. This is the vision for Union Stations that we're going to be able to get throughout the metro region by growing it and connecting the metro region. It's the hub of the system, and so, you know, we used to say before we had the deal done, it's not an option. Union Station has to be built out. It's going to be the heartbeat of the system. Now, with regards to the northern mayors and northwest mayors, I've been in communication with them quite a bit since being in office. When the hybrid option was proposed about a week and a half ago, had a chance to talk to the vast majority of them, those that I could catch by telephone, as to their thoughts. You know, there are a couple things, quite candidly, we have to work on. One is we have to reset the relationship between communities and RTD. There is a great deal of mistrust that has to be repaired. And we can't sidestep that. Let's address it. It's the elephant in the room. Mistakes were made. We have to be committed to repairing it. Otherwise, it's just like any relationship that occurs. If you and I don't trust each other, no matter what I say to your benefit, you're always going to wonder, why should I believe you today? And that's exactly what's happening here. And as a mayor coming in whose system is already all committed and ready to be built out, I can play a neutral, hopefully convening role and a regional role to say, let's begin to repair this relationship. Let's meet the elephant face to face and have the conversation. Hopefully we can work over time to rebuild it. And so what I learned yesterday, and we'll confirm this through conversations with the northern mayors, that they now support the hybrid model. And we need to make sure that RTD is able to follow through what they say they're going to do. And they continue communicating candidly with the mayors, even when there are hiccups, be honest.
Right.
And we keep this thing moving. And the next step will be, can we package, sell, and have this thing voted on in November? And that's the tougher conversation that I think we're all going to have very, very soon.
Well, the next week or so.
Yes.
Big time. Bill James is here. District A is included.
Oh, I didn't see you
Glendale.
sitting there. How you doing?
Yeah, and there are a handful of other members of the board, of course, here. And, you know, I've always enjoyed our relationship. Bill, let's face it, we've known you for 6 or 7 years, maybe 8 years, certainly before you ran. And one of my favorite things to do is to call and bitch to Bill about something that's not working right. And unfortunately, we don't ride the fast track stuff as much as probably a lot of you in the room. But when we do, we want it to work properly. And by and large, it does. But we just want to make sure we've got a little momentum, and we're trying to get better all the time. Let's talk about the bicycle thing. You know, I ran into Paul Ryan, regional, what is he, director of all things regional for you, or something to that effect.
That's right.
I ran into him the other day on the bike, on one of the B-cycle bikes. And
You not literally ran into him, just
luckily,
figuratively
no,
ran into
exactly.
him. Okay.
But I did take a picture of him
Absolutely.
to prove that I caught him on the bike. But how's the system going, and is it having the desired impact that places like Paris had? And,
Oh, yeah.
you know, is it getting people out and about,
Yeah.
both for health reasons but also for transportation?
Oh, without question. The B-Cycle program is growing exponentially. I should have brought some of the numbers here, but the numbers are very impressive. I mean, they are going through the roof. And if someone's here who has more up-to-date information, but we have been extremely impressed with the increase in the number of ridership, or the amount of ridership around the B-Cycle program. The utility of it is great. You know, visitors really like it. And
Yep.
if you, I'm going to encourage you to go downtown one Sunday, and just in the middle of the afternoon where you think you won't see anyone. And by the way, because of our metro region cooperation, building the sports complex as well as 16th Street Mall, Denver has the most vibrant downtown in the nation. And if you go down Sunday where you think no one's going to be there, you've got people all over downtown enjoying, coming down for dinner and for shows. But the real interesting thing is to see the number of families with small children and adults riding these B-cycles. And so I encourage you to take a look at it. It's an amazing thing, but it's going through the roof. We are in conversation about how we raise more resources to make it a year-round. Our climate seems to be conducive to that now. Of course, we're worried about how we protect the bikes from rust and damage from being out in the cold and periodic wetness. But we're looking at how we expand that.
How about sponsorship stuff? Because it's all connected again.
It's all connected.
We ride
Sponsorship.
it for health, we ride it for fun.
Yep.
But the sponsorship money seems to be there. It seems to be going strong.
Yeah, Steve Sanders and those who support and help coordinate the B-Cycle program have done an unbelievable job in getting sponsorship on the bikes. And again, it's growing, and we have a lot to be thankful for with regards to that program. It's certainly resetting the culture. And you know, one of the things we got to remember is that everything we're talking about, fast tracks, sharrows, bike lanes, B-Cycle, these are elements that are all meant to shift a culture. We're not a culture of alternative transportation modes in this region. We have been about automobiles and maybe buses. But the reality is we have to change this culture, and it's going to take longer than many of us have to continue. But the bottom line is we're setting the stage to allow that culture to grow and to permeate throughout the rest of our region.
And people like options. So
Absolutely.
We're giving them that. We're pushing them in that direction, you might say.
Absolutely.
You mentioned your 77 miles of bike lanes last year added.
Yes.
Is that what you said?
Yes.
Josh is here, our public works director. What do we have, 7 miles of streets in Glendale or something to that effect? 13 if you add, that's going both ways. All right, perfect. We play to our strengths.
He said round trip.
Yeah. Exactly. And you should make sure you meet George, by the way, if you guys haven't met. And our city manager here, this is the Glendale table.
I see.
We welcome you. Our
leadership.
Our mayor-elect there, Mike Donovan. We'll introduce him in a little while. And a big part of it, Glendale is really a neighborhood of Denver.
Yeah.
But what we do in Glendale, a lot of very, very unique things. One of our favorites is our 4-sided King Supers that sits kind of on an island but is accessible literally on 3 sides. Then we got them to put in windows on the 4th side, which is almost unheard of in a supermarket. And we've had a lot of fun with that project. But the results of that design are that, and other things, of course, but that King Super is doing twice the volume they thought they would.
Oh,
because of
absolutely.
the accessibility. And that's what I want to talk about is accessibility. How do you, the Cherry Creek Bike Trail, let's say, the bike path that runs through Glendale, but of course Denver on both sides and down into Arapahoe County. There's the other trails that make a network of bike paths around, which are really, that's one of the big reasons I moved to Glendale was being able to have access to that. To go to a Rockies game and be there in 20 minutes or so and
Right.
go by bike it's an incredible asset that we have in Glendale. The connectivity there is something our staff has talked to your staff. This has been ongoing for years. And again, having those conversations at the basic level of building those relationships is a start.
Right.
How we can stripe the streets and make sure things connect with our upcoming Riverwalk project, with the other expansion and projects and stuff in Glendale is very important to us. And knowing we have your commitment to do that. And I want to share with you a quick example of the most recent example. So Peggy Lehman's in the crowd, and Peggy and I serve on a Cherry Creek Basin working group. So it's basically from the Platte River, the Cherry Creek Trail, down into Parker and Douglas County, and all of the municipalities, including Aurora, by the way, that are involved with things that we can do to add value to the trail. And so we came up with this idea to put forth an idea that really originated in Denver's reach study along Cherry Creek, the Cherry Creek Drive plan. It was done like in 1999. And on it, there's a bridge that connects Kentucky Avenue across Cherry Creek to the Cherry Creek bike path. So right now, today, if you were to walk on Kentucky Avenue going eastbound, you leave the great city of Glendale and enter the great city of Denver. Again, most people don't know this because there's not a sign, there's no welcome to Denver sign, but it's a seamless transition. But the problem is the sidewalk ends there. There's nothing along Cherry Creek to go from there. what this bridge and the crossing along that would do is connect it to the trail, which was something that was very important to us. But that goes back to that plan.
Right.
So as mayor, a lot of these ideas have been floating around
Oh,
our communities
absolutely.
for a while.
Yeah.
And the trick is to grab them and do them and get the support to do it. So Peggy, thank you for your help with that. We've raised all the
Very
money.
committed.
It's a lot of piecing together we've done. Yeah, we'll get to George in just a second. But, can we just move a bridge that's not being used as much? We talked about that. Do we have to build a new one? Isn't there one that we could recycle somewhere?
About that.
And the trick is you look at a bridge and think, well, what would that cost? Maybe $100,000. Jerry Peters is here, our city manager. We talked about it a few years ago. Shouldn't be that hard.
Right,
Well,
right.
it's 6 or 7, depending on what all you want to throw into that with the connections and the crossings and the sidewalks and whatever else we need to add on there. It adds up quickly. So thanks to GoCo, they put in a big chunk.
Oh, good.
But basically, we're giving you a bridge in a few months.
Thank you very
Yeah.
much. Appreciate it.
Yeah. so-
Anything else you want to give, we'll take that too.
I figured as much.
Yeah,
But, George, you've been good. We've talked to you a few times. Your commitment's still there, right? We're going to connect that thing accordingly. And I'm kind of putting you on the spot here, but that's why we're here, too. Yes. All right, good. Thank you.
Did I just see something legislatively on that? Did something just come through, Peggy? No? Maybe I'm thinking of another bridge. Okay.
Well, there's that big bridge over connecting the one over I-25. You've heard about that.
Oh,
right?
of
The
course,
thing-
yeah. That one's coming down.
That's a big one.
Yeah, maybe move that one.
How many millions of dollars are we spending on that? Some
Yeah,
federal money in
yeah,
there, too.
yeah.
But, again, it's
$8
a
million?
Is it really 8? See, ours is a bargain, guys.
Absolutely.
700,000 or whatever. It's another good example of giving people what they want.
Absolutely.
Obviously, there's a need there. We can talk about the pros and cons of how much it costs and stuff like that forever. But, a lot of what we do is that. Before we open it up to questions, though, touch on the Airtropolis thing. We're here mostly to discuss transportation, maybe on a more basic level, but when we talk about the tourism and the opportunity that is available, not just to Denver and Glendale and other cities, but to Colorado.
Sure.
The airport's a big deal. I heard
Right.
recently, and I know Brian Elms pretty well, I've enjoyed getting to know him. The thing's only like half built out.
Oh, yes.
It's like the city of Aurora. Did you hear him say that? They have the opportunity to keep going and expanding. We don't have that. We're a little landlocked down
Yeah.
there.
Those are the real opportunities I think that still exist. Denver International Airport master plan calls for 12 runways.
And how many do we have now?
We have 6. So we have 12 runways that we can build out to. We are, it's built for 100 million passengers. Today we have 53 million passengers coming through the airport, and we're ahead of schedule. Economically, when it was first blueprinted or designed, everyone thought the Colorado Economic Forum said DIA would be by 2008 an $8 billion economic impact. Well, by the time 28 rolled around, it was a $22 billion economic
No
impact.
kidding.
So no kidding. It is growing and it continues to grow exponentially. And so let me just tell you what we're doing around the Airtropolis. And for those, how many of you have heard the term and now know what an Airtropolis is? Wonderful. I appreciate it because we are doing everything, one, to educate folks on the importance of building out the Airtropolis and making sure that globally our Airtropoli is just as competitive as all the others around the world. But the reality is this: if you take DFW, Atlanta Hartsfield, Chicago O'Hare, and LAX, you can put all 4 of those airports in DIA's land footprint and still have 10,000 acres remaining. That's how large that airport is. And we can either sit back and allow DIA and the surrounding land owned by private landowners to grow organically and haphazardly, as we've seen some airports do around the world. Or as a city, as a region, we can decide to work together to put some guide rails and some guiding principles together to say, these are things we value most. For example, we don't ever want residential to encroach upon the sound buffer of DIA. We don't want to run into the Stapleton issue ever again. We never will because we've set some guide rails. But we certainly want to continue to make sure it's still far enough away where people understand there's an airport up there. And airports today spend more money during expansion on trying to get the public to agree to let them grow versus putting that money into infrastructure.
Well, you ever lived under a runway? Or, I mean, not under a runway, but
you
under
know,
a flight path?
we lived in Park Hill for a while
Yeah.
as kids, and I remember if you're on the phone, it was like, hold on for about 30 seconds.
Right.
And you let the plane go by. You all remember that?
Yeah.
And you also remember what FAA had to pay those homeowners in order to insulate their homes, build new roofs as well as windows in their homes to insulate them from the sound. It never really made a hill of difference, but it was billions of dollars that had to be paid to retrofit those homes after, you know, they sued Stapleton.
Yeah.
So the Aerotropolis is really about creating some guiding principles for the development and beginning to market that land worldwide. Examples here in the United States of an Aerotropolis, good examples would be Dallas-Fort Worth, Las Colinas area, which is a thriving commercial area around DFW. These are companies that thrive because they're near the airport, and they want to access the global markets very quickly. You know, Schiphol in Amsterdam is another example. I've been to Schiphol but didn't pay attention. I wasn't looking through the lens of an Aerotropolis at the time, but we will hopefully at one point look at it again. But it's very thoughtful, sustainable, strategically built out, or at least laid out principles that allow that area to develop in the right way. And we already have a lot of companies that are looking at DIA. We just want to make sure the infrastructure and the values that we hold regionally are incorporated.
Well, and there's some in Asia too, I know.
Oh, yeah,
Our city manager
yeah.
was mentioning this. Was it Seoul, Korea that you said? Is that what it was?
And I hope to
really-
visit Seoul in the next year or two, because we did hear about theirs.
Can you get away with doing that as the mayor? You just jump on a plane and go to Seoul?
No,
or
I wish.
Amsterdam Or something?
No.
It's a pretty good gig.
Yeah, I mean, there are business reasons for those kind of trips, but if you're in the region and you have an opportunity to go visit Korea or Schiphol, for example, when we do the nonstop flight to Iceland, that's an opportunity to go see Schiphol while you're in the region and
That's a big
take advantage
success.
of it.
Did you see that billboard recently? The best part about going to Paris is Iceland. And they've got people lounging in
I hadn't seen that
in
one
the
yet.
hot springs baths or whatever they
Yeah.
are. All right, so a lot of attention on the Aerotropolis thing. That's
Right.
a big deal. Great potential there. You've been working on that. I mean, you were on the city council for years, so
Right.
that's been a passion of yours. I know,
Yeah.
for a
Is
while.
Julie Bender in the room? Oh, there she is. So
Julie.
Julie Bender is who was, as president and CEO of the Denver DIA partnership, took me on a tour in D.C. Did we do New York? We just did D.C. media and introduced me to the concept of Aerotropolis. And you know, we met with media. They were like really enthralled with this concept. I was learning about it, and I never forgot it. And as a representative of the DIA area on city council, I always said, we've got to put some guardrails on this. Otherwise, it will never have any sense of a vision of what we're trying to develop.
Right.
So I owe the Aerotropolis introduction to Julie Bender. And now I'm telling you, the more we've talked about it, we have been visited by companies from overseas, now saying, how can we help you
See,
grow
part
this
of it is just
Aerotropolis?
throwing it out there.
Right.
You know, it's again using other people's ideas, of course. That's a big
Absolutely.
part of what we do. But knowing how to do the timing and the sequencing of those ideas is very important.
Oh, it's
Look what's
time.
happening. All we're doing is talking about it.
Right.
We've got the guide rails. We know what can happen if the out of control things happen.
Right.
And then those connections are that much more difficult. But if we can
Absolutely.
start now planning accordingly, we're going to need that transportation structure in place to accommodate
Absolutely.
that growth. It's nice that you brought up Julie. The last thing I wanted to talk about before we go to the question and answer thing is Cherry Creek.
Yes.
It's right across the street. There's a lot going on there. That's a big asset to us in Glendale is how do we partner with Cherry Creek. Some of the best retail anywhere, maybe on earth, is right there between the shopping center and the business improvement district, the Cherry Creek North. We've got the Chamber of Commerce there on Cherry Creek. We've got neighborhood groups. We've got a steering committee. We've got Rotary clubs. Everybody has an interest in Cherry Creek.
Right.
Are there things that we can do from your perspective as a mayor there in Cherry Creek? You know, a lot of what we've done in Glendale is to improve that culture of community so that we can be every bit of an asset regionally as Cherry Creek is. Our focus, though, is entertainment. You've seen the rugby thing. We want to grow that internationally. The whole theme of our Riverwalk project, we're going to talk about that later a little bit, is that international audience, which
Right.
plays right into the whole DIA thing.
Right.
But when we take it back down, the transportation issues back down to the ground level, you know, ultimately there's an opportunity to connect downtown in Cherry Creek and Glendale. And what does that look like from your perspective, Michael? And And I don't know, what other ideas do you have with Cherry Creek? We should
I-
talk about it more.
I think you hit the nail on the head. I think there are two things really that we've got to address regarding Cherry Creek. One is one that you just mentioned, connectivity. We've got to not have a downtown afraid to connect to Cherry Creek,
Right.
and Cherry Creek not afraid to connect
Vice
to
versa.
downtown. And so we've got to create that opportunity where we work maybe with RTD or someone to create kind of that shuttle to move folks back and forth. Cherry Creek is Denver, Denver is Cherry Creek is Glendale, Glendale is Cherry Creek. So we've got to create that connectivity and not be afraid to do that. And so that is, I think that's leadership. It's going to be you, me, the new mayor coming in and say, how do we do this? We've already started those conversations with RTD, with the Downtown Denver Partnership, as well as with neighborhood groups in Cherry Creek and the bid. So connectivity is going to be extremely important. The second thing is, and this is the hardest thing, I really see, and Cherry Creek is the most vital, robust economic engine for Denver's retail, right? But Cherry Creek's in the midst of a transition, which we have to acknowledge. And when it comes to that transition, meaning that there are new ideas coming into Cherry Creek and they're beginning to mesh with kind of the sustained or older establishment of Cherry Creek, and there's some tension there. And we're going to have to work through those tensions. We got to find the middle ground to allow Cherry Creek to advance and move to the new normal, and what will help keep it vibrant versus the status quo today, which is arguably has been dynamic for Cherry Creek, but is in the midst of a transition. So we can deal with some of the shuttered or at least vacant retail that's there, and allow it to grow and allow it to continue to reclaim its place as a vibrant center for Denver. And so in working with Councilwoman Robb and the neighborhood leaders, my administration is trying to figure out how do we find that middle ground and how do we help the new ideas come in, mesh with the status quo, and continue to keep Cherry Creek a vibrant place.
Well, it needs to be, and that's a priority.
Absolutely,
It's gotta be,
absolutely,
huh?
absolutely.
And Councilmember Robb. Well, it's the age-old struggle. It's residential and retail. And
Absolutely.
How do they coexist, you might say? And then, of course, the height issue is a big one. And we get some of that here in Glendale as well. Well, good. That's good to hear.
Yeah, we got to work on it. And again, I think the concept of this leadership and transition, because there are new normals, whether it's in land use, transportation, just how we do business as a government. Things have changed, and we've got to be ready to evolve and change as well. If not, we're going to have a real serious disconnect between what's necessary to keep the city strong or your city strong moving forward and where people are today. So there's got to be a transition on a lot of different fronts. Leadership is the one to say we cannot be afraid of these conversations. It may not be popular, but we're not called or sworn to be popular. We're called and sworn to lead, and that's what we have to be willing to do.
You can't avoid that stuff. When it comes to connections, there's a great story. If you ever visit a college campus is maybe a good example, or maybe a park, a big city park. When they get built, some people, there are kind of two trains of thoughts here. One is to build the sidewalks first and try to show people where to go. The other theory is, well, build some of that stuff, but let's let the public decide where they want to go. College campuses are great because you see a lot of these diagonal crossings, and it just shows that over time people have worn a path through the grass, and it's like, well, maybe we ought to,
College campus,
maybe we put a sidewalk there, maybe we pave that somehow. Which leads me, of course, to the issue in Washington Park, which is a fascinating one. It was a nice job going out to the community and doing your cabinet meeting there. How many people do you have on that cabinet? There's a lot of people there, from what I hear.
That was more than just the cabinet.
Gotcha.
That was a lot of the sub-cabinet members.
So no bloated buryocracy.
No
here.
bloated
This is
bureaucracy,
good,
absolutely.
Good government. Okay. But I know there's that issue where the runners want one thing, and for other reasons you want to bypass that and whatever else. And you have, I think, a lot of people that enjoy Washington Park here in the room. Again, it's a great value to us in the Glendale area too. Has that been resolved, or where do we
No,
stand?
we're working on that right now. I don't.
And subjects that you don't want to.
Yeah, no. That was not. Interesting. There are a lot of things that we're coming into the office learning, and this was one of those that kind of caught us, and it was like, okay, let's take a look at this. Let's better understand what the concern is. And it was in that cabinet and community meeting where this was brought to our attention, and really the concerns. And so, for those of you who don't know, we take the cabinet to communities. We're going to do it every quarter. We'll pick a part of town that we'll go in, and we actually conduct our cabinet meeting there. It's on a Saturday morning, and after we conduct about an hour cabinet meeting, We allow for George Delaney and Public Works to go sit at a table, and then the public's able to come up. Well, I thought as mayor I would get to go and float the room, and I look up, I was just writing something on the table, and there was a whole line of folks standing there to talk. And so, I mean, I'm there as well to do the same thing. So the bottom line is that one of the issues that was brought to my attention was this Washington Park
that's a
redesign.
transportation issue,
It's an
let's
issue,
face it.
yeah. So we've had Public Works bringing us a comprehensive report so we can figure out how best to address that.
Good deal.
Yeah.
Rich is standing here for questions. You know, I was reading recently that Los Angeles, did you hear this? I think it was 2008 maybe. The mayor and civic leaders and people, you know, they have some serious transportation issues in Los Angeles. And they put on the ballot a $35 billion increase. So it was a half-point sales tax increase to raise $35 billion to better address these transportation issues. And it passed at 70% approval.
You are talking L.A.
LA? Well, I know. Very, very different, of course.
Well, that transportation system out there just sucks.
Well, it's just different, isn't it?
Yeah.
All right, well, on that note, Rich, let's open it up. There might be some questions in the audience. It's a great chance, and I see Bill James with his hand up. Leave it to our RTD director to lead the charge.
Yeah,
there.
Bill.
Rich McClintock, of course, Transportation Solutions Executive Director. Thanks for running the microphone there, Rich.
And Eric,
Hi, Bill.
We'll have 2 mics running, so raise
Okay.
your hand and we'll get as many questions as we can.
Who's got the other one, Alex?
I do.
Thank you,
Erica.
Mr. Mayor, for being here.
You
and
bet.
Being a part of this.
Which one are you talking to? Both of us, or?
Can you see from the globe?
All
up
three
there?
of you.
I know.
Let the one with the hair excused himself. Thank you for being here, and thank you for the spirit of collaboration that we have in this metro area. I want to thank yourselves and all the elected officials in the metro area for that. It's what contributes to the fast track system, and certainly that spirit of collaboration is a foundation will have to continue, particularly if we go to the ballot in November. The one aspect of all of that is it's a unified system. It's a metro area system, and the fast track system is a community asset. And a vital part of that, as you mentioned, was Union Station. A very important part of Union Station, I think that's kind of been glossed over a little bit, is the 16th Street Mall and
Yes.
shuttle. And as you know, and by the way, I've been working with George's staff and others. The Downtown Denver Partnership has been wonderful as a partnership on a steering committee to plan the possibilities for renovation of the mall. As Union Station becomes the hub of the system, the 16th Street Mall will become even more important as a connection through the hub of Denver, the central business district. I'm interested in your perspective on how we can further partnership to make the mall as good as the Union Station will be and the rest of the fast track system.
I appreciate that. As you know, the mall is our #1 tourist attraction in Denver. And Bill, I just met yesterday with Phil Washington. He and I meet on a monthly basis, and we have designed the next meeting, next month, will be spent just on the 16th Street Mall. Its maintenance, really our vision for it. We've had conversations today. I'll meet with Tammy Dorr today to have some conversations about downtown partnership as well as 16th Street Mall and what we need to do going forward. The reality is that 16th Street Mall is now 30 years old. Is that about right? And it's time that we're probably behind in looking at really making the right investment to revitalize it. It's still a great attraction, but if you take a close look at inspect it, because we don't walk with inspecting eyes, we walk with the ease and just we're like this. But if you walk with inspecting eyes, you see that it is in dire need of some maintenance and some refurbishment. And so we're beginning to turn our attention to it to see how we might help in generating the resources to go about revitalizing the 16th Street Mall.
Well, it's the street life, too. You
It's the
want
street
that,
life,
that
yep.
sense of place.
Absolutely.
Well, yeah, you can't
Good
shut
question,
that
though.
down.
Thank you for asking that.
Good timing, apparently, too, huh? You're on it already.
We're working on it.
All right, who's next here?
The other mayor.
Oh, welcome, Mayor.
Hi, Larry, Michael. Michael, 2 things. One, thank you very much for Paul Ryan
the ability to have that direct line from the suburban regional mayors is important, and we appreciate that. I want to compliment you on your national exposure, which leads to my next question, taking CBS with you to Tokyo. And can you give us an update on where we are with your pitch to ANA?
Aha, good question and good timing. First, let me talk about Paul Ryan for 30 seconds. He was fired this morning. I'm just kidding. Paul Ryan, he's here.
There he is.
Paul was the very first, after my election, the very first appointment that I made. It was the first hire I made. I made a call the day after the election, and I said, Paul, I want you to come and join me as the regional director. I appreciate that because he has the right temperament, right attitude. He knows all the players, and he helps the administration and the city look really good on a regional level. And so I second that comment.
And he understands the importance of it.
And he understands the importance. It's a passion of his. And the complex issues, from water to transit to environmental issues, he gets it. Let me, to your question, Mayor, ANA was just in Denver. We had dinner together on Tuesday. Was it Tuesday? Yes, it was Tuesday. Oh, Kelly Bruff is back there moving her head. I want to thank Kelly and the Metro Denver Economic Development Corporation. Played a tremendous role in helping us to really promote our city and state for a nonstop destination for All Nippon Airlines in Tokyo. So this to us has been a priority for quite some time. And when I talk with former mayors, Mayor Federico Pena, Wellington Webb, Higginlooper, we have all worked on it. I've been over to Tokyo at least 5 times. We're scheduled to go back in November. This last year that I went, we changed the dialogue a little bit, and we said we're really ready to share the risk with you. That caught the attention of the CEO, chairman of All Nippon Airlines in a meeting. For the first time in recent memory, they came to Denver to do a site visit. And they were here just this last week. Their executive VP was here, all their network planning executives were in town. And here's what they said. We have a very positive, and I'm using their vernacular because the Japanese culture, they never commit. Even when they say yes, it doesn't mean they commit. It's a powerful culture that you learn, but they said we have a very positive thought that as we expand in the next couple of years, we're very positive Denver, Colorado is there. And let me tell you something. That may not be something by me saying make you jump out of your chair, but as someone who's been interacting with the Japanese on this for the past 7 years, we're ready to jump out of our skin because that tells us that we are well on our way to securing this nonstop flight. So that's powerful. It will open up the gateway to the Asian continent.
It's amazing how long that takes.
It takes a long time. The Icelandic Air agreement that we just commenced, and we will do the nonstop flight for the first time in May, 7 years to get that one done. And this one, again, dates back to Federico Pena.
You share a border with Greenwood Village, do you not?
Yes.
How's that connection coming? Have you guys talked about that?
Mayor, you want to make comment on that we share borders with your city? The question was, how is that working?
It's working great. We were honored by your visit to the city, and we did a joint tour of the city boundaries between Denver. And I think we have coming up a joint paving project,
right,
which we've talked about,
right,
of Bellevue, which will be taxpayer friendly, and in that we'll share the costs, and by doing both sides at the same time, it should be a cheaper bid on the project. The other thing that is really great is, we have Paul and we have Michael, but we have most of all Peggy.
Peggy Lehman, that's right.
Yes, we share our common boundary with District 4 in Denver and District 4 and District 2 in Greenwood Village, and by happenstance, we have 2 council members in each of those districts, and one from each is with me today. Sitting to my right is TJ Gordon, and to my left, Leslie Schulter. So we've had a long-term relationship with Peggy, working on the Dayton station and other things, and I would like to ask you if it would be possible to get a resolution in Denver passed by the City Council that Peggy be Councilwoman for life.
All right.
Hey, Ron, are you using your fancy paving equipment to do that job too? Nice. They got
Thank
a lot
you,
of
Mayor.
fancy. They got a great public works department. So do we, of course. Will.
Absolutely.
And so do you. All right, we're all friendly here. Hi, Julie.
Hello, and thank
Julie.
you, Mayor Hancock, for your very nice words about the Aerotropolis. I really appreciate that. By the way, we were at the headquarters of USA Today.
Yes, where
in
we were in
Virginia.
Washington.
You
Yes, yes.
I'm Julie Bender. I'm with Cherry Creek North Business Improvement District, and I really appreciate the focus on transportation today and connectivity. I think, as we probably all know, downtown Denver and Cherry Creek are number 1 and number 2 in terms of visitor destinations in Colorado. And they are also actually the number 1 and number 2 sales tax generators for the city and county of Denver. Having said that, the BID just did some consumer research and found out that, unfortunately, only 3% of the visitors to Cherry Creek today are arriving on RTD. So, and it's actually fallen over the last 5 years. It used to be 6%, today it's 3%. So we know there's a tremendous gap there, particularly with the opening of Union Station as a transit hub coming up. And I want to thank you for your leadership in pulling downtown, Cherry Creek, Visit Denver. We have Anthony Graves with us today from Visit Denver. Can you comment further on that, Mayor?
Well, all I can
Thank you.
tell you is, I drive through Cherry Creek, and it's a lot of traffic. and if more people, if we have a better system to connect people to Cherry Creek, no matter where they're coming from, then we can alleviate some of that traffic. That should be the goal, right? I also see a lot of taxis who are coming that are going to and from Cherry Creek. So the connectivity is really what we've got to address. And again, we are in the very near future hoping to pull stakeholders out of Cherry Creek and downtown, sit down and see how we can work together on this connectivity issue.
Ever talked about a Cherry Creek bus of some sort? That might be cool.
Yeah.
A big, well decorated, so it's got the wrap on it and whatnot. That might be an interesting, so it's a designated Cherry Creek bus, especially from downtown or wherever most of the people are coming from. And you brought up a good point. We talk a lot about the residents and the businesses, but let's not forget all the tourists that come in. You mentioned it with the Red Bike program, and it's great that Anthony's here and that there's interest from Visit Denver to be in the room. It's just as important. Who's next, Rich?
Coming right over there.
Hey, Bill.
Hi, Larry. How are you? Bill Elfenbein. And mayors, thank you so much for being up there and talking about what's so important to this area. I want to take the downtown Cherry Creek connection maybe a step further, at least to think about it anyway. Glendale is obviously thinking about a major project in the next few years. We also have a continuing problem out the Leetsdale corridor out towards 9 Mile Station and southeast Aurora. There are a number of people, obviously, who pass through the Cherry Creek area every day commuting. And it would be nice, perhaps, if we could get together as different cities and different entities and talk about a corridor that would, or a transportation corridor that would take some of the traffic that goes through Cherry Creek from downtown out and vice versa, and make something of a better transit system that serves that Leetsdale, Cherry Creek, Glendale, downtown, Aurora area, because it is a major bottleneck, as I think most of us know, and it's a very important part. Would love to see the cities get together and start something now towards really fixing a major problem.
Bill, I'll tell you, there was that, was it an EPA study? There was some money a few years ago where they really looked at that. And Leetsdale is really a good example of a lack of planning. You pointed out with the airport, if we just let it grow organically, maybe that isn't always the best way. But Leetsdale is significant because it's a good example of what happens to streets like that over time, over, what, say 30 years maybe, of how when you drive on it now, it's kind of piecemealed together. And I'm a big fan. I love this complete streets idea. Improved landscaping, sidewalks detached from the streets, wider sidewalks, traffic calming measures, and really creating a sense of place with a street. And Leetsdale, that's a tough, that's a black to white issue. That's from one end of the spectrum to the other. But there ought to be some things we can do. And the private sector is a good example of maybe an untapped area with that. And I can tell you our staff worked hard with King Soopers to create that King Soopers on Leetsdale and really create more of a sense of balance with it. So it is more interactive, it's more accessible. King Soopers, if you don't know, paid for those medians along Cherry Street as an example of ways to tap into the private sector to help benefit a road that has traditionally been more public, let's say. And I agree, Bill. You know, that's a hard thing to do, and that's what is that, a 7-mile stretch maybe from Cherry Creek to 225? It might not quite be that far, but there's some real gaps in there, and I think we're committed to trying to find a better way to fix that, make it more of a place that you want to be. You know, in a lot of ways, it looks like Santa Fe or something, where again, it's just been pieced together, unfortunately, over time. So, thanks for bringing that up. You want to add anything?
No. I think that's an example of kind of the stepping back and looking more globally about where we want to focus resources. Because you mentioned the Leetsdale and the connectivity between Glendale, Aurora, Glendale, Denver, downtown. There are other places that we can do the same thing. He mentioned Santa Fe. You look at Santa Fe and go, who designed this?
Right.
I mean,
Why?
it's
Right.
and why? I mean, if you go down there for one of the popular First Friday art walks, you literally are walking in the street because only one person can be on the sidewalk at a time. And so there's some thought and the community's already come together and developed a new vision for their area that say we want to promote pedestrian traffic here. We want people to be out. Same thing with the Welton corridor in Denver. I mean, it's the same thing. Who thought to put that shuttle up against the sidewalk instead of allowing these businesses to open up and be more of a patio type of operation? Allowing things to happen without a forethought to the global vision, and they occur haphazardly. They don't think about how we drive new business. And so we've got to blend the economic development with the land use planning, with the transportation planning, make sure everyone's at the table and we ask the question simply, how does it lend itself to sustainability? How do we make sure every one of these elements are addressed? And let's do a better job in planning for these areas.
Do a better job. Good. Rich?
Great. Yeah, I think we have time for just 2 or 3 more quick questions. We
Okay.
promised to get the mayor out of here at 9:30, and we'll take a break. So right here's our next question.
Dave Webster. I used to live in Ann Arbor, Michigan, which is sort of like Boulder on steroids with higher taxes. But they had their Ann Arbor transit system. So this is a challenge to RTD had a system. If you were 60, you could get a half-price bus pass. You know, picture pass. And so you rode the bus for half price. More interestingly, if you were over 65 and you had to go shopping, you rode free. But not only that, you go to the grocery store, you get a bag of groceries, you get a free taxi ride home. Now, their property taxes are twice ours. But what would that do to RTD usage? If, we'd get people out of cars. Just a thought.
So Dave, you're talking incentives, basically. What kind of incentives can we all come up with to encourage that kind of behavior?
Let me take you even a step further, because I think that I met with the Mayor's Youth Commission for the first time since I've been in office this past week, and I was blown away by these young people. Few of them take the bus. And I know, as a father of teenagers, I was late today because of my daughter. That's really the reason why. 13 years old, and I'm waiting for her. We're waiting for her. And but the reality is that they want to be driven everywhere they go. Now, as parents, we can deal with that, right? Get on the bus, but you worry about the safety of your child and things of that nature. But you also want to do a better job in making sure it's easy access for them. We are looking at a plan that maybe this summer we'll have better feel about it. Is that when our young people register for school and they get their ID cards, everything that young person needs should be loaded up on that card, their ID. Busing, for example. That should include their RTD bus pass. They should be able to load, or as a parent, I should be able to go on a computer, have their ID number, and load their ID card with bus credits. So we're trying to create this one pass thing. And so I've already initiated conversation with RTD and said, we want you to be a partner in this. We want discount services for our young people. We should have the same discount services for our seniors. I agree with you. How do we make it easy so they know where they're going, what buses to catch, what time they arrive, and then we make it a one-stop shop for them to just swipe their card, get on the bus, and go on. And I don't have to worry about my daughter being stranded somewhere without money in her pocket or a way to get on that bus to get home. So it's those sort of things that we can do a better job, and it should save us money by doing it, by the
Well,
way.
we have the technology to do it too.
Absolutely.
Good.
I think there's one last question on the far side, and then we promise to let the mayor get out of here, and we'll have a break for everyone.
So you've done a great job discussing connectivity, and I was wondering if you could touch on equity and how you're going to ensure that diverse and low-income groups are also part of that connectivity plan.
Did you say low-income groups? I'm sorry?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
Yes. You know, that's a good question. One of the forethoughts in planning out this whole transit system, as well as bus rapid transit and general bus services, to make sure that the working communities and communities where people are living along the fringes in our economic society have access to them. And that is, you know, one of the things that we always talk about. We don't separate the areas. We think about moving people from their residential areas, no matter where they live, to the centers where they can find jobs and access opportunities. That's why TOD planning is going to be so important, and to make sure that those TODs have mixed housing for those who live along the fringes, who we need to have affordable housing for them. We need to make sure they can access those transit systems, and that the transit system is thoughtfully planned out, obviously, moving people to the centers where the jobs are. And we also can create jobs there at the center. Let me give you an example of what we're talking about. As we build the Eagle P3 line to DIA, we have a lot of folks who live along those fringes who work at DIA every day in the concessions, at the car rentals counters, and to have those stations along Pena Boulevard with some good multifamily or high-density housing is going to be very important to us. And the developers already presented the plans. Now, there's only so far north they can go with that housing, but the reality is that the 40th and maybe the 62nd stop, if there, as one is planned right now, at least designated, you can create opportunities for folks to live right there at that transit, get in DIA in a matter of 10 minutes, get back home in 10 minutes, live, work, and play.
Out of the flight path.
Out of the fight, that's right.
Let's not forget that.
That's right, staying outside of the noise contour.
Does that help answer your question anyway?
Yeah.
I think
So it is visioning and planning for sustainability and for the future. That's really what that is, and being thoughtful of everyone who will need and access to those transit systems, as well as to the jobs that will be generated and close to them.
Well, it's a big employment center in its own. Eh?
Absolutely.
Look how many employees at DIA when it's built out. If there's 100 million passengers a year, how many people are working in a place like
Well, right now, if you think about DIA today, there are 33,000 employees at DIA, direct and indirect to the airport. The airport does, matter of fact, the airport's probably one of the smallest employers. The rest are all the concessionaires, airlines, and people who are, of course, working and doing business at the airport. 33,000. They're coming from all over the region to work there.
Sure.
That's how powerful the airport is, and it's going to grow. So if you double the population or passengers coming through, you can imagine you're probably doubling or at least,
Close to
doing another 50% increase in personnel.
All right, so bottom line, committed to better transportation, more options.
That's right. That's right.
Open to discussion,
Right.
accessible.
All there.
Mayor Michael Hancock.
Wait. Next month, we're going to lose a friend as a mayor. I can't leave without saying to all of you and in front of my good friend here, Larry Harte, I teased, it wasn't teased, it was true. This was my mayor. This was the first mayor who put his arm around me and said, whatever you need, I'm going to help you. And who's always been there to answer my questions about being mayor, about this regional cooperation. He's been a tremendous regional leader as well of all the mayors in the region. And I know that middle next month is you get to go back to some anonymity and get out of the fishbowl a little bit. Yeah. But let me just give, on behalf of the people of Denver and from me personally, a thank you. You're a friend and you're a pal, and I will miss you greatly in this room.
Thank you. Absolutely. So it's halftime. We got a 10-minute break here. Before we go, though, special thanks to Charlie Kercheval and your team at First Bank for ponying up and being the big sponsor here. Thank you, Charlie. Great part of the community. Secondly, you'll notice we're trying to dazzle you with some of the displays in the room. You'll see pictures of Glendale and Aurora and parts of Denver. And that is due to our staff that's here. Linda Cassidy, our Deputy City Manager in charge of all things Infinity Park, and her team, Julie up top in the booth there, and the others that have helped make this event possible. A special thank you to you. If you have any questions She will be here and is very accessible. And also Chuck Line is here, our other deputy city manager in charge of developmental, development and all things related to development around the city. Has a great legal mind as well. He'll be here to help answer any questions. And we're going to introduce our Mayor-elect Dunafin, Mayor-to-be Dunafin here in a few weeks. So 10 minutes, we'll see you back in 10 minutes. Thank you.